I kept my $28 million inheritance a secret. Good thing I did, because when my daughter went into labor, my son-in-law chose to abandon her for his mistress. When the doctor reassured me, I made a call and said 3 words. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I never imagined that the happiest day of my daughter's life would become her darkest nightmare. My name is Blanche, and at 63 years old, I thought I had seen enough cruelty in this world. I was wrong. The call came at 3:47 in the morning. Celine's voice was shaking barely a whisper through her tears. Mom, the baby is coming. Quinn left me. He's gone. I threw on the first clothes I could find and drove through the empty streets of Sacramento, my heart pounding with every traffic light. 28 years of marriage had taught me to read between the lines. And I knew this wasn't just about labor pains. Something was terribly wrong. When I burst through the doors of Mercy General Hospital, I found my 31-year-old daughter hunched over in a wheelchair, her face streaked with tears and her hands clutching her swollen belly. The nurse beside her looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as she pushed Celine toward the maternity ward. Where is he? I demanded, though I already dreaded the answer. Celine couldn't speak. She just shook her head, fresh sobs racking her body. The nurse cleared her throat nervously. Ma'am, the husband left about an hour ago, said he had an emergency. An emergency. While his wife was about to give birth to their first child, I followed them into the delivery room, holding Celine's hand as another contraction hit. Her grip was so tight I thought she might break my fingers. But I didn't care. All I could think about was how Quinn had looked at me during their wedding reception 5 years ago like I was some insignificant old woman who didn't deserve his attention. He said he couldn't do this anymore. Celine gasped between breaths. He said he found someone who makes him happy, someone younger, someone better. The words hit me like physical blows. Not now, not during the sacred moment when a woman needs her partner most. The cruelty of it took my breath away. For the next 6 hours, I watched my daughter bring her son into this world while fighting through the deepest heartbreak imaginable. Every push was accompanied by tears that had nothing to do with physical pain. Every breath was a struggle against the betrayal that Quinn had inflicted at the worst possible moment. The baby arrived at 9:52 in the morning, 7 par 4 hours of perfect innocence, who would never know how his father had abandoned them both. Celine held him with trembling arms, her face a mixture of overwhelming love and devastating loss. He's beautiful, I whispered, stroking the baby's tiny fingers. What will you name him? James, she said softly. After Daddy. My heart swelled with pride and broke simultaneously. She was naming her son after my deceased husband, the only man who had ever truly loved and protected our family. The contrast to Quinn's cowardice was stark and painful. That's when Quinn finally decided to make his appearance. He walked into that hospital room like he was doing us a favor, checking his phone and looking annoyed by the inconvenience. His hair was perfectly styled, his clothes expensive and unwrinkled. Clearly, he hadn't spent the night pacing hospital corridors like a concerned father should have. How did everything go? He asked casually, as if he was inquiring about a dentist appointment. Celine's face crumpled. Even after everything he had done, she still hoped he had come back for her for their family. Quinn, please, she whispered. Look at him. Look at our son. He glanced at baby James with the same interest someone might show a piece of furniture. No warmth, no wonder, no love. Listen, Celine, we need to talk about logistics. I can't afford to pay for 2 households right now. Ashley thinks we should get our own place somewhere fresh where we can start over. Ashley. So the other woman had a name. I watched my daughter's soul shatter as Quinn continued talking about logistics while their newborn son lay in her arms. He spoke about child support payments like they were a burden, about visitation schedules that would be convenient for his new life. You'll be fine, he said, looking directly at me for the first time. You've got your mom. She can help with the baby while you figure out what you're going to do with yourself. The dismissive way he said it, like I was just some free babysitting service, like Celine was a problem to be managed rather than the woman he had promised to love and cherish, ignited something dangerous in my chest. But I said nothing. I just smiled politely and nodded, playing the role of the harmless old mother-in-law he expected me to be. Quinn left 20 minutes later after taking a single awkward photo with the baby for appearances. He kissed Celine's forehead like he was saying goodbye to a distant relative, promised to be in touch about the paperwork, and walked out of our lives. Celine sobbed until she had no tears left. I held her and baby James, whispering words of comfort while my mind worked furiously. Quinn thought he was so clever, so untouchable. He had no idea what kind of woman he had just crossed. You see, there were things about me that Quinn never bothered to learn. Things that Selene didn't even know. For 5 years, I had watched him treat my daughter like a trophy wife. While looking down on me as if I was nothing more than an obstacle to his happiness, he saw a 63-year-old widow living in a modest 2-bedroom house driving a 12-year-old Honda, shopping with coupons at the grocery store. He assumed I was surviving on Social Security and whatever small savings my husband might have left behind. Quinn had no idea that my late husband Thomas had been far more successful than anyone realized. No idea that the insurance payout I had mentioned after the funeral was actually a $28 million inheritance that I had kept completely secret for 3 years. I had my reasons for living modestly, for keeping that money hidden. I had seen what wealth did to families, how it brought out greed and manipulation, how it made people love your bank account more than they loved you. So I lived simply, invested quietly, and watched carefully. And now, as I held my broken daughter and my innocent grandson, I knew exactly why fate had kept that secret safe. Quinn thought he could destroy my family and walk away unscathed. He thought there would be no consequences for his cruelty, no price to pay for abandoning a woman in labor. He had made the biggest mistake of his life. The weeks following James's birth were the longest of my life. Every day, I watched my daughter struggle to hold herself together while caring for a newborn, all while processing the devastation Quinn had inflicted. She barely ate, rarely slept, and jumped every time the phone rang, hoping it might be him calling to apologize and come home. It never was. Sitting in Salon's living room at 2:00 in the morning, holding James while she tried to get a few hours of rest. My mind drifted back to the first time I met Quinn Richardson. It was 6 years ago at Salon's 25th birthday party. I remember thinking he was handsome in that polished way that some women find irresistible. Perfect teeth, expensive suit, confident smile. But there was something about the way he looked at people that made me uneasy. He assessed everyone like he was calculating their worth, their usefulness to him. When Celine introduced us, Quinn barely glanced in my direction. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Thompson," he said, already turning away to talk to someone more important. It was clear he had categorized me immediately. Widow, probably struggling financially, not worth his time or attention. Over the following months, as their relationship grew serious, I tried to voice my concerns to Celine gently, carefully, because I knew how love could blind a person to obvious red flags. "He's very focused on success," I said one afternoon as we shopped for her wedding dress. "Are you sure he loves you for the right reasons?" Celine's eyes blazed with defense. "Mom, you don't understand Quinn like I do. He's ambitious, yes, but he's also caring and protective. He wants to give me the kind of life I deserve, the kind of life she deserved." Even then, I noticed how Quinn had convinced her that love was measured in material things, the size of the engagement ring, the expense of their wedding, the prestige of their neighborhood. I should have told her then about the money. Should have explained that I could give her any kind of life she wanted, that she didn't need to marry someone for financial security. But I held my tongue, remembering what Thomas had told me before he died. "Blanche," he had said, holding my hand in that hospital bed, "promise me you'll be careful about the money. Don't let it change who you are, and don't let it attract people who would love your wallet more than your heart." Thomas had built his wealth quietly through smart investments and a small technology company that exploded in value during the dot-com boom. When he sold it 5 years before his death, we agreed to live modestly and keep our fortune private. We had seen too many families torn apart by greed, too many relationships poisoned by money. So I honored his wishes. Even after his death, even when the will revealed the full extent of our wealth, $28,400,000, I continued living in our small house, driving the same car, shopping at the same stores. Only my lawyer and financial advisor knew the truth. I told Celine there was a small insurance policy that would help me manage, but I never revealed the actual amount. I wanted to see who she would become, who she would choose to love without the influence of money. I wanted to protect her from people who might see dollar signs instead of the beautiful, intelligent woman she was. Unfortunately, Quinn turned out to be exactly the kind of person I was trying to protect her from. The signs were there from the beginning if I had been willing to see them. The way he encouraged Selene to quit her teaching job after their marriage, making her financially dependent on him. The way he controlled their social circle, surrounding himself with people who could benefit his career while isolating Celine from friends who might question his behavior the way he talked about me. "Your mom seems nice enough," he said to Celine one Christmas, not realizing I could hear him from the kitchen. "But we need to make sure she doesn't become a burden. Old people can be expensive, and I don't want her expecting us to take care of her when she can't manage on her own anymore." I had gripped the counter so hard my knuckles turned white, but I said nothing. I was already managing quite well on my own, thank you very much. My modest lifestyle was supported by investment returns that exceeded Quinn's annual salary, though he would never know that. Over the years, I watched him slowly erode Celine's confidence. He criticized her cooking, her appearance, her intelligence. He made jokes about her simple family background at dinner parties, as if he was doing her a favor by marrying beneath his station. The cruelest part was how he made her believe she was lucky to have him. He convinced her that no other man would want a woman from her humble circumstances, that she should be grateful he had chosen her despite her limitations. I bit my tongue through it all, playing the role of the grateful mother-in-law who appreciated his generosity in marrying my daughter. But inside, I was taking notes, mental photographs of every slight, every cruelty, every moment he revealed his true character. The worst incident happened 2 years into their marriage. Celine had mentioned to Quinn that I was having some minor health issues. Nothing serious, just routine tests that had me worried. Instead of offering support, Quinn saw an opportunity. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise, he told Celine. If your mom gets really sick, she might qualify for Medicaid. That way, we wouldn't have to worry about her medical bills cutting into our future. As if my potential suffering was just another financial planning opportunity. That night, I sat in my bedroom and looked at the bank statements I kept hidden in my jewelry box. $28, $400,000, earning me approximately $150,000 per month in conservative investment returns. I could have bought Quinn's precious house 3 times over with pocket change, but I didn't tell Celine. Not then. I was still hoping she would see his true nature on her own, still believing that love would open her eyes to what kind of man she had married. I was naive. Love didn't open her eyes. It blinded her to everything except her desperate need for his approval. The final straw came 6 months ago when Celine discovered she was pregnant. I watched Quinn's face when she shared the news over dinner, saw the flash of annoyance before he managed to plaster on a fake smile. "Are you sure this is the right time?" he asked, not even bothering to pretend he was happy. Financially speaking, babies are expensive. Celine's joy deflated like a punctured balloon. "I thought you'd be excited. We talked about starting a family. We talked about it eventually. I just think we should be more established first, more secure, more established." They lived in a 4-bedroom house in the best neighborhood in town, drove luxury cars, took expensive vacations twice a year. How much more established did he need to be? But I knew what he really meant. A baby would tie him down, make it harder for him to pursue other interests, other women. That's when I started making phone calls, quiet inquiries through old friends of Thomas's people who owed me favors or who specialized in information gathering. If Quinn was going to hurt my daughter, I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Quinn had been having affairs for over 2 years. Multiple affairs with women he met through work, through his gym, even through their own social circle. He was careful, discreet, but not careful enough to fool a determined investigation. The current affair with Ashley Winters, a 24-year-old marketing assistant at his firm, had been going on for 8 months. She had no idea he was married. He had convinced her that he was divorced, that his ex-wife was difficult and vindictive, that he was just waiting for the paperwork to be finalized. I had photographs, credit card receipts, hotel records, text messages, enough evidence to destroy him in any divorce court in the country. But I didn't tell Celine. Not yet. I wanted to give him one last chance to do the right thing, one opportunity to step up and be the husband and father she deserved. I hoped against all logic and evidence that the birth of his son might awaken something decent in him. Instead, he abandoned them both in the hospital and announced his intention to start fresh with his mistress. Now, as I rocked baby James in the darkness of his mother's living room, listening to Celine cry herself to sleep in the next room, I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Quinn Richardson had made his choice. He had chosen cruelty over compassion, selfishness over love, his own pleasure over his family's well-being. Tomorrow, I would make mine. 3 weeks after James was born, Quinn decided to make his grand return. I was helping Celine with the baby when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw his silver BMW parked in the driveway, the same car he had driven away in that horrible night at the hospital. My daughter's face lit up with desperate hope, and my heart broke all over again. "Maybe he's come to his senses," she whispered, smoothing down her hair and checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. She had lost most of her pregnancy weight, but still looked fragile. Exhausted from sleepless nights and emotional trauma, Quinn walked in carrying flowers, not the expensive arrangements he used to bring during their courtship, but cheap supermarket roses that looked like an afterthought. He was dressed casually, which was unusual for him, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Celine?" he said, his voice carefully modulated. You look good. Really good. She melted at the compliment, and I had to grip my coffee cup to keep from saying something I would regret. Where's the little guy? Quinn asked, glancing around as if James were a piece of furniture he was checking on. Celine hurried to the bassinet, lifting our sleeping grandson with tender care. He's been asking for his daddy, she said softly. Though James was obviously too young to ask for anything beyond milk and clean diapers, Quinn took the baby awkwardly, holding him like he might break. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope that some paternal instinct might kick in, that seeing his son might awaken the decent man I had once believed existed beneath his selfish exterior. He's gotten bigger, Quinn observed, stating the obvious. He's grown since birth, Selena said eagerly, and he started making these little sounds when he's hungry. The doctor says he's very advanced for his age. Quinn nodded absently, already handing James back to his mother. That's great. Listen, we need to talk about some practical matters. My stomach tightened. Here it came. I've been thinking about our situation. Quinn continued settling into the leather armchair he had always claimed as his own, and I think we can work something out that benefits everyone. Celine perched on the edge of the couch, clutching James to her chest. You mean you're coming home? The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Quinn looked everywhere except at his wife's hopeful face. Not exactly, he said finally. But I don't want James to grow up without knowing his father. I think we can arrange a custody schedule that works for everyone. Custody schedule? Celine's voice was barely a whisper. Ashley and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if James stayed with you during the week and I take him on weekends. That way he gets stability during school years, but I'm still involved in his life. Ashley and I have been talking. He said it so casually as if his mistress had every right to make decisions about his son's future. What about us? Celine asked, tears starting to flow. What about our marriage? Quinn shifted uncomfortably. Celine, be realistic. We both know things haven't been working between us for a long time. Ashley helps me see what I've been missing. What you've been missing. The words came out as a broken whisper. I gave you everything, Quinn. I changed my entire life for you, and I appreciate that. I really do. But people grow apart. It doesn't mean we can't be civilized about this. Civilized, as if destroying a family was just a matter of good manners. That's when Celine made the mistake of begging. Please, she whispered, reaching for his hand. We can go to counseling. We can work through whatever problems we have. James needs his father. I need you. Quinn pulled his hand away like she was contagious. Celine, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You're too needy, too dependent. Ashley is independent. She has her own career, her own goals. She doesn't need me to complete her. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Here was a woman who had given birth to his child just 3 weeks ago, who was struggling with postpartum depression and the devastation of abandonment. And he was comparing her unfavorably to the woman he was cheating with. But I can change, Selene pleaded. I can go back to work. I can be more independent. Quinn sighed like she was being unreasonable. It's too late for that. I've already made up my mind. Because of her, Celine said, finally finding a spark of anger. Because of Ashley. Don't blame Ashley for this. Quinn snapped, his mask of civility slipping. She didn't break up our marriage. Our marriage was already broken. She just helped me realize that I deserved to be happy. He deserved to be happy, while his wife deserved to be abandoned during childbirth. What about what I deserve? Celine asked, her voice growing stronger. What about what James deserves? Quinn's face hardened. You'll get child support, of course. I'm not trying to abandon my responsibilities. And James will have 2 parents who love him even if we're not together. 2 parents who love him. As if love was something you could schedule for weekends only. How much, I asked quietly. Both Quinn and Selene turned to look at me. I had been so silent during this conversation that they had almost forgotten I was there. I'm sorry, Quinn said. Child support. How much are you planning to pay? Quinn's jaw tightened. He had always resented my presence during their private conversations, but now I could see him calculating whether he needed to plate me. We'll work out the details with lawyers, he said dismissively. I'm sure we can come to a fair arrangement. Fair according to who? I pressed. You make what, $120,000 a year. Standard child support in California is 20% of gross income for one child. That's about $2,000 a month. Quinn's face flushed red. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone he considered irrelevant. I have other expenses now, he said through gritted teeth. Ashley and I are looking at apartments, and Ashley and you, I repeated. I see. So, my grandson's financial needs come second to your girlfriend's housing preferences. She's not my girlfriend, Quinn snapped. We're in a committed relationship. The irony of that statement was apparently lost on him. A committed relationship, I said slowly. The way you were in a committed relationship with Celine when you made your wedding vows? Quinn stood up abruptly, his face twisted with anger. I don't have to listen to this from you. You don't understand adult relationships. You've been alone for 3 years? For maybe if you had ever made my wife happy instead of filling her head with unrealistic expectations, Quinn. Celine gasped. But he was just getting started. Your mother has always resented me, Selene. She's jealous that you found someone who could give you a better life than she ever could. Look at this place. He gestured around their living room dismissively. Look at how she lives, scraping by on whatever pittance your father left behind. She wants to drag you down to her level. The silence that followed was deafening. Celine stared at her husband in horror, finally seeing the man I had always known he was. James began to cry. As if sensing the toxic energy filling the room, Quinn seemed to realize he had gone too far. But instead of apologizing, he doubled down. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, he said to me with fake sincerity. But someone needs to tell the truth around here. Celine deserves better than living paycheck to paycheck depending on government assistance and charity from elderly relatives. Government assistance, charity from elderly relatives. I stood up slowly, feeling decades of suppressed anger crystallizing into something cold and sharp and unbreakable. You're absolutely right, Quinn, I said quietly. Celine deserves much better. He looked surprised by my agreement, mistaking my calm tone for defeat. I'm glad we understand each other, he said smugly. Now, about that custody arrangement. There won't be any custody arrangement, I said. Quinn blinked. Excuse me, you just told us exactly who you are. A man who abandons his wife during childbirth, who prioritizes his mistress over his son, who believes child support is negotiable based on his personal convenience. I paused, letting the words sink in. That's not the kind of man who deserves weekend custody of an innocent baby. Quinn's face turned purple with rage. You have no say in this, old woman. I'm his father. I have rights. Rights you forfeited when you walked out of the hospital, I replied. But don't worry. I'm sure your lawyer will explain your legal obligations, even if you don't understand your moral ones. Quinn grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, but not before delivering one final blow. Enjoy your pathetic little family, he snarled, because that's all you're ever going to have. Celine will never find anyone else willing to put up with this dysfunction. And when she comes crawling back begging me to reconsider, I might not be so generous. The door slammed behind him, rattling the windows and making James cry even harder. Celine collapsed onto the couch sobbing, but these weren't tears of despair. They were tears of release. Finally, she had seen Quinn's true face, heard the contempt he felt for both of us. I held my daughter and grandson while they cried, but inside I felt nothing but calm determination. Quinn thought he had won. He thought he had broken us, reduced us to helpless victims who would accept whatever crumbs he chose to throw our way. He had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. That night, after Celine finally fell asleep exhausted from crying, I sat in my modest kitchen with a cup of tea and my cell phone. The clock on the microwave read 11:47 p.m., but I knew the person I was calling would still be awake. Marcus Wellington's office came the crisp voice of my late husband's closest friend and business partner. Marcus, it's Blanche Thompson. Blanche, his tone warmed immediately. How are you holding up? And how's that new grandson of yours? Marcus had been Thomas's best man at our wedding 34 years ago. He was one of only 3 people who knew the true extent of my inheritance, and he had been managing my investments with discretion and remarkable success since Thomas's death. James is beautiful, I said softly, but we have a problem. I spent the next 20 minutes telling Marcus everything. Quinn's abandonment, his cruelty, his threats, and his obvious belief that we were helpless women with no resources to fight back. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When I finished, the silence stretched for several seconds. Blanche, he said finally, are you asking me what I think you're asking me? I'm asking you to help me protect my family, I replied carefully. By any legal means necessary, another pause. How far are you willing to go? I thought about Celine's face when Quinn called me pathetic, about James crying while his father dismissed him as an inconvenience, about the years of watching this man slowly destroy my daughter's self-worth. As far as it takes. All right then. Give me 40 hours to make some calls. After hanging up, I made 2 more phone calls. The first was to Rebecca Martinez, the private investigator who had gathered evidence of Quinn's affairs. The second was to David Chen, a lawyer who specialized in family law and had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when protecting his clients' interests. Both conversations were brief and to the point. By the time I went to bed at 1:15 a.m., the wheels were already in motion. The next morning, I found Celine in the nursery staring down at James as he slept. Her face was puffy from crying, but there was something different in her expression, a hardness that hadn't been there before. "I keep thinking about what he said," she murmured without looking up, "about you being jealous about us deserving better. He's right about one thing. We do deserve better." I put my arm around her shoulders. "Yes, we do. I want to fight him, Mom. I want to make sure he can't just walk away from his responsibilities and start over like James and I never existed. But I don't know how. I don't have money for a good lawyer, and Quinn knows people has connections." "Don't worry about the lawyer," I said quietly. "I've already made some calls." Celine looked at me in surprise. "Mom, you don't have to spend your savings on this. I know money is tight for you." If only she knew. "Some things are more important than money," I said, which was true enough, "and I won't let him destroy my family without a fight." That afternoon, while Celine napped and James played in his bouncy seat, I drove to my bank for the first time in 6 months. The manager, Patricia Kendrick, greeted me personally. One of the perks of having $28 million on various accounts. "Mrs. Thompson, what can we do for you today? I need to make some transfers," I said, sliding a handwritten list across her desk. "And I need them processed immediately." Patricia's eyes widened as she read the amounts. "Are you sure about these figures?" "Completely sure." $100,000 went to David Chen's retainer account. $50,000 went to Rebecca Martinez for expanded surveillance and investigation. Another $200,000 went into a special legal defense fund I was establishing. But the biggest transfer, $5 million, went into a new account I had opened specifically for what Marcus and I had discussed on the phone. "Will there be anything else, Mrs. Thompson?" "Yes, I need you to prepare cashier's checks for these amounts." I handed her another list, and I need them ready by tomorrow morning. The drive back to Selen's house gave me time to think about what came next. Quinn had made it clear that he saw us as obstacles to his happiness, nuisances to be managed with minimal effort and expense. He expected us to accept whatever terms he offered because he believed we had no other choice. He was about to learn how wrong he was. That evening, my phone rang at exactly 7 p.m. Eti Marcus said without preamble, "Richardson Industries just lost their biggest client. Apparently, there were some concerns about the company's leadership and stability." Richardson Industries was Quinn's employer, a mid-sized consulting firm where he had worked his way up to senior partner over the past 8 years. Their biggest client was a technology company that Marcus's investment firm happened to have significant influence over. "How much will that affect them?" I asked. "They'll survive, but they're looking at about a 40% revenue drop. There will definitely be layoffs, and I imagine the partners will be taking significant pay cuts." I felt a grim satisfaction. Quinn's arrogance had always been tied to his financial success. Let's see how confident he felt when that foundation started cracking. "What about the other matter, the real estate deal already in motion?" My contact at the bank assures me they'll be calling him Monday morning. Quinn and Ashley had been looking at expensive apartments, planning their new life together on credit and assumptions about Quinn's continued high income. They had even put a deposit down on a luxury condo downtown, one that required a substantial down payment and proof of steady income. Soon they would discover that both the down payment and the income were more fragile than they had imagined. The weekend passed quietly. Celine was starting to regain some of her strength, and James was settling into a better sleep routine. I cooked meals, did laundry, and played the role of the helpful grandmother while monitoring my phone for updates. Monday morning brought the first wave of chaos. Quinn called Celine at 9:30, his voice tight with stress. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did your mother do something to interfere with my job?" Celine looked at me in confusion. "What are you talking about? Richardson just lost the Morrison account. 3 years of work gone overnight. They're saying it's because of concerns about company stability, but nobody can explain what that means or where it came from." "I don't understand what this has to do with my mother," Celine said. "It's too much of a coincidence. First she gets all high and mighty with me yesterday. Now suddenly my biggest client disappears. Your mother has always resented me, and now she's trying to sabotage my career." I had to admire his paranoia, even if his conclusions were wrong. I wasn't trying to sabotage his career. I was dismantling his entire life piece by carefully planned piece. "Mom doesn't have that kind of influence," Selene said, looking at me with apologetic eyes. "She's just a widow living on Social Security. If only they knew." Quinn's voice grew more agitated. "Something's not right about this." First, Morrison, now the bank is asking for additional financial documentation for our condo application. They approved us 2 weeks ago, and now suddenly they need more paperwork. Maybe it's just bureaucracy, Celine suggested. No, this is coordinated. Someone is pulling strings behind the scenes. Quinn's breathing was getting faster, more panicked. Ashley thinks maybe it's someone from your family, someone who wants to punish me for leaving you. Ashley thinks even in crisis he couldn't make a decision without consulting his mistress. Quinn, you're being paranoid, Celine said. My family doesn't have those kinds of connections. But Quinn had hung up, leaving Celine staring at the phone in bewilderment. Mom, she said slowly. He sounded really scared, like he thinks someone is targeting him deliberately. I busied myself loading the dishwasher, keeping my expression neutral. Paranoia is common when people are under stress. He's probably just looking for someone to blame for his problems. It wasn't entirely a lie. Quinn was under stress and he was looking for someone to blame. He just didn't realize how right his instincts were. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Phase 2 initiated. Expect contact from target within 24 hours. Phase 2 was more personal. While Quinn was dealing with professional setbacks, Rebecca Martinez was preparing to deliver some uncomfortable truths about his private life. Ashley Winters was about to discover that her divorced boyfriend was actually still married to the woman who had just given birth to his child. I had debated whether to involve Ashley directly. Part of me felt sorry for her. She was young, naive, and clearly being manipulated by a man who specialized in deception. But then I remembered Quinn's words about how she helped him realize he deserved to be happy while his wife was recovering from childbirth. Ashley had made her choice when she decided another woman's husband was fair game. Now she could live with the consequences. That afternoon, while Celine was giving James a bath, my phone rang again. Mrs. Thompson, this is Rebecca Martinez. I have just finished my conversation with Miss Winters. How did she take the news? About as well as you'd expect. Shock, anger, denial, then more anger. She's demanding proof. So I showed her the marriage certificate, birth certificate, and some photos from the hospital. She got very quiet after that. And then she started asking very specific questions about Mr. Richardson's finances, his habits, and his promises to her. I get the impression she's been supporting him more than he's been supporting her. Interesting. Quinn had apparently been playing both women, taking money from Ashley while demanding support from Celine. Did she say what she plans to do next? She mentioned something about having a serious conversation with him when he gets home tonight. I don't think it's going to go the way he expects. After hanging up, I made myself another cup of tea and settled into my favorite chair to wait. Somewhere across town, Quinn Richardson was about to discover that his carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling faster than he could repair it, and this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, I would make the phone call that would change everything. 3 simple words that would set in motion the final phase of my plan. Quinn thought he could destroy my family and walk away unscathed. He thought we were powerless, helpless beneath his notice. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he had been about the quiet widow he had dismissed as irrelevant. The call came at 6:43 on Tuesday morning. Quinn's voice was barely recognizable, hoarse, desperate, stripped of all the arrogance that I had grown accustomed to hearing. Celine, I need to talk to you right now. My daughter looked at me questioningly as she held the phone. I nodded, knowing this was the moment I had been waiting for. I'm listening, she said, not over the phone. I'm coming over, Quinn. If this is about custody or child support, we should do this through lawyers. Please. The word came out broken, like it physically hurt him to say it. Just give me 10 minutes. I'm already in your driveway. Celine ended the call and peered through the living room window. Quinn's BMW was there, but something was different. The car looked like it hadn't been washed in days, and through the windshield I could see him slumped over the steering wheel. When he knocked on the door, I barely recognized the man who had walked out of our lives just over a week ago. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive clothes wrinkled and stained. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands shook as he clutched a manila folder against his chest. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Celine stepped back to let him in her face, a mixture of confusion and caution. I remained in my chair, watching him like a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. Quinn collapsed onto the couch where he had sat so confidently just days before delivering his ultimatum about custody arrangements and his plans for a new life. Now he looked like a man who hadn't slept in 72 hours. "Ashley's gone," he said without preamble. "Gone where Celine asked. Gone. Gone. Moved out. Blocked my number. Left a note saying she never wants to see me again." Quinn's hands trembled as he opened the manila folder. "She found out about you, about James, about everything. He pulled out a stack of photographs, images of him and Selene at their wedding hospital, photos of James's birth copies of their marriage certificate. I recognized Rebecca Martinez's work immediately. Someone hired a private investigator to follow me. Quinn continued, his voice hollow. They documented everything. Every lie I told Ashley, every time I was with you when I claimed to be somewhere else. Ashley saw proof that I was still married when I told her I was divorced. She saw pictures of our son being born while I was telling her I was ready to start a family with her. Celine's face hardened. So, she left you because you lied to her the same way you lied to me. It gets worse. Quinn's voice cracked. She wasn't just my girlfriend. She was also my business partner on the side. We had been working together on some freelance consulting projects, and she had been fronting money for our apartment, our vacation plans, even some of my personal expenses. When she found out about the lies, she demanded everything back immediately. I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. Ashley Winters was smarter than I had given her credit for. How much money? I asked quietly. Quinn flinched as if he had forgotten I was there. $73,000. Money I don't have because I spent it on. He gestured helplessly around the room at the furniture and electronics he had bought during his marriage to Selena. That's not all, he continued, his voice getting smaller with each word. Richardson Industries is laying off staff. They lost 3 major clients in the past week, and they're restructuring. My position has been eliminated. 3 major clients Marcus had been busy. What does that mean for you? Celine asked, though I could hear she was struggling to care about his problems. It means I'm unemployed. It means the apartment Ashley and I were supposed to move into next month is gone because I can't prove steady income. It means I have no job, no girlfriend, no place to live, and $73,000 in debt to a woman who now hates me. The silence stretched between us. Celine rocked James gently, her face unreadable. I sipped my coffee and waited. I need your help, Quinn said finally, the words seeming to tear something inside him. My help. Celine's voice was dangerously calm. I need somewhere to stay while I figure this out. Just temporarily. I can sleep on the couch, help with the baby, contribute to household expenses once I find a new job. No. The single word hung in the air like a blade. Quinn blinked. Celine, please. I know I made mistakes, but we're still married. We're still a family. I can make this right if you just give me a chance. We're still married. Celine repeated slowly. The same marriage you walked away from when I was in labor. The same family you abandoned for a younger woman. That marriage, that family. I was confused. I was scared about becoming a father, about the responsibility. Ashley made me think I wanted something different. But I realize now that what I really want is here with you and James. It was a masterful performance full of the right words and emotions. If I hadn't known better, I might have been moved by his apparent remorse. But Celine had learned to see through his manipulations. What you want, she said carefully, is a place to live and someone to take care of you while you figure out how to pay back $73,000 to your ex-mistress. Quinn's face flushed red. That's not fair. I'm trying to make amends here. Amends? Celine stood up, still holding James. You think saying sorry erases what you did? You think admitting you made a mistake fixes the fact that you abandoned your wife during childbirth? I came back. You came back because your other option disappeared. You came back because Ashley threw you out and you have nowhere else to go. Quinn's mask of remorse finally slipped, revealing the anger underneath. Fine. Yes, I need help. But that doesn't mean my feelings aren't real. We have a child together, Celine. We have history. That has to count for something. It does count for something. Celine said, it counts as evidence that you're willing to hurt the people who love you most when it's convenient for you. Quinn turned to me desperately, apparently deciding to try a different approach. Mrs. Thompson, surely you can talk sense into her. I know we've had our differences, but we both want what's best for Celine and James. Having their father in their lives is better than no, I said quietly. Quinn stared at me. No. What? No, I won't talk sense into her. No, having you in their lives isn't better for them. And no, we don't both want what's best for my daughter and grandson. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 63 years in my bones, but also feeling stronger than I had in months. You see, Quinn, I've been watching you for 5 years. I've seen how you treat people when you think you have power over them, and how you act when that power disappears. I've seen your arrogance, your cruelty, and your complete inability to take responsibility for your actions. Quinn's face went pale. What are you saying? I'm saying that everything that's happened to you in the past week, losing your clients, losing Ashley, losing your job, none of it was coincidence. The manila folder slipped from Quinn's hands, photographs scattering across the coffee table. I walked to my purse and pulled out my phone, scrolling to a specific contact. Marcus. Yes, it's Blanche. Our conversation yesterday confirmed everything we suspected. Please proceed with the final phase. I hung up and looked at Quinn, whose face had gone from pale to gray. You see, Quinn, you made a critical error in judgment. You assume that because I live modestly and drive an old car, I must be powerless. You assume that because I'm a widow, I must be helpless. Most importantly, you assume that I would stand by and watch you destroy my family. What did you do? His voice was barely a whisper. I protected my daughter and grandson from a man who abandoned them when they needed him most. A man who showed them exactly who he was, then expected forgiveness when his backup plan fell apart. Quinn struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. You can't do this. I have rights. I'm James's father. You're a sperm donor, I said coldly. A father is someone who stays for the hard parts. Someone who puts his child's needs above his own desires. Someone who protects his family instead of abandoning them. I walked to the window and looked out at his BMW, the same car that had carried him away from the hospital that terrible night. That car will be repossessed by the end of the week, I said, matter-of-factly. The credit cards Ashley was paying for are already canceled. The apartment you can't afford anymore was just the beginning. Quinn made a choking sound. This is insane. You're just a what, Quinn? Just a pathetic old woman living on Social Security. Just an irrelevant widow who should be grateful for whatever scraps you throw our way. I turned back to face him, and for the first time in 5 years, I let him see exactly who he was dealing with. I am a woman with $28 million. And the will to use every penny of it to protect my family from people like you. The silence that followed was deafening. Quinn stared at me with his mouth open, his brain struggling to process what I had just told him. 28 million, Celine gasped. I nodded, keeping my eyes fixed on Quinn's face. Your late grandfather was more successful than anyone realized. I kept it quiet to protect us from exactly this kind of person. Someone who would see dollar signs instead of family. Quinn sank back onto the couch like his legs had given out. You're lying, am I? I pulled my phone out again and showed him my banking app scrolling through account balances that made his eyes widen in shock. This is just one account, Quinn. I have investments, properties, and resources you can't even imagine. His face crumpled as the full extent of his situation became clear. You destroyed my life. No, I said firmly. You destroyed your own life when you chose cruelty over compassion. When you chose a temporary thrill over permanent love. I just made sure there were consequences for those choices. Quinn looked around the room desperately like a cornered animal. Celine, please. I'm your husband. I'm the father of your child. You can't let her do this to me. Celine stood up straighter, James still in her arms. For the first time since I had known her, she looked truly free. You're not my husband, she said clearly. Husbands don't abandon their wives in hospitals. And you're not James's father. Fathers don't walk away when things get difficult. You're just a man who made terrible choices and now has to live with the consequences. Quinn stumbled toward the door, then turned back one last time. This isn't over. I'll fight you. I'll take you to court. You'll what? I interrupted. Hire lawyers with money you don't have. Sue me with evidence you can't produce. Face me in court where every detail of your abandonment and adultery will become public record. Quinn said nothing, but his shoulders slumped in defeat. The door is behind you, Celine said quietly. Don't come back. After he left, Celine and I sat in silence for a long time. James sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms. 28 million, she said finally. 28, 400,000. I corrected. Give or take a few 100,000 depending on the stock market. Why didn't you tell me I reached over and stroked James's tiny hand? Because I wanted you to choose love for the right reasons. I wanted to see who you would become without the influence of money. I wanted to protect you from people like Quinn. But I married him anyway. Yes, but you also found the strength to see through his lies when it mattered most. Money didn't teach you that. Your own courage did. Celine was quiet for a moment, processing everything that had happened. What happens now? She asked. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Now we build the life you and James deserve. The life I should have given you from the beginning. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our new home watching through the window as Celine pushed James in his swing on the back patio. The house was everything Quinn had promised her, but never delivered. Spacious, elegant, surrounded by gardens where my grandson could play safely, but more importantly, it was filled with genuine happiness. The transformation in my daughter had been remarkable. Gone was the anxious woman who had walked on eggshells around her husband's moods, replaced by someone confident and secure in her own worth. She had enrolled in graduate school to become a family counselor, inspired by her own journey from manipulation to freedom. I want to help other women recognize the signs she had told me. I want them to know they don't have to accept being treated as less than they deserve. James Noun, 10 months old, was thriving in ways that broke my heart with joy. He was a happy baby, quick to smile and laugh, surrounded by love instead of tension. He would never know the fear that had shadowed his first months of life. As for Quinn, the consequences of his choices had continued to unfold with mathematical precision. The divorce proceedings had been swift and decisive. David Chen had presented evidence of adultery, abandonment, and emotional abuse that left Quinn's lawyer with no room to negotiate. Celine received full custody of James, the house they had shared, and substantial alimony. Quinn's visitation rights were limited to supervised visits, which he had yet to request. His professional life had never recovered from losing those major clients. Word traveled fast in his industry about companies that couldn't maintain stable relationships, and Quinn found himself effectively blacklisted from his former career. He was working as a sales associate at an electronics store, struggling to make ends meet while paying both child support and his debt to Ashley. Ashley herself had moved to Los Angeles, determined to start fresh without any reminders of the man who had deceived her so completely. I bore her no ill will. She had been as much a victim of Quinn's manipulations as Celine, just in a different way. The private investigator's final report had revealed even more disturbing details about Quinn's character. Rebecca Martinez discovered that Celine and Ashley weren't his only victims. There had been other women over the years, other lies, other betrayals. His pattern of behavior went back to his college years, a consistent history of using people and discarding them when they no longer served his purposes. Some people Marcus had observed during one of our monthly financial reviews reveal their true nature when they think no one is watching. Others reveal it when they think no one can touch them. Quinn made the mistake of thinking both. I had initially worried that Celine might feel guilty about Quinn's downfall, might blame herself for not seeing the signs earlier, but she surprised me with her clarity. "I feel sorry for him," she said one evening as we watched James take his first tentative steps across our living room. Not because his life fell apart, but because he chose to build it on lies in the first place. He could have been a real husband, a real father. He could have had everything he claimed to want, but he chose selfishness instead. The truth about my finances had taken longer for Celine to fully process. For weeks after Quinn's final departure, she would look around our modest surroundings and shake her head in amazement. "All these years," she said, "you could have lived in a mansion-driven, luxury cars traveled the world. Why didn't you?" "Because those things didn't matter to your father and they didn't matter to me." I had explained. We had everything we needed, each other, our health, our family. Money was just a tool to protect what was important. Now, 6 months later, we had found a balance. The new house was beautiful, but not ostentatious. Celine's education was paid for, James's future was secure, and I had established trust funds that would ensure my family's stability for generations. But we still shopped with coupons, still chose experiences over possessions, still remembered that wealth was a responsibility, not a right. I had also quietly established a foundation to help other women escape abusive relationships, providing legal aid, counseling services, and emergency housing. It was run by professionals, managed discreetly, and funded anonymously. Quinn would never know that his cruelty had inspired something that would help hundreds of women find their own paths to freedom. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Through the front window, I could see David Chen standing on our porch with a manila folder in his hands. "Mrs. Thompson," he said as I opened the door, "I have some news I thought you should hear in person." We settled in the living room while Selene brought James inside from his playtime. David's expression was serious, but not concerned. The look of a lawyer who had difficult information to share but wasn't worried about the outcome. "Quinn Richardson was arrested yesterday," he said without preamble. Selen's face went pale and she instinctively held James closer. "Arrested for what? Credit card fraud and identity theft. Apparently, he's been using false information to obtain loans and credit cards, including using your old address and some of your personal information from when you were married." I felt a cold anger settling in my chest. Even now, even after everything, Quinn was still trying to victimize my daughter. How much trouble is he in? I asked. Significant trouble. This isn't his first offense. The investigation uncovered a pattern of financial fraud going back several years. He's looking at potential prison time. Celine was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, she asked, what does this mean for us? Nothing, David said firmly. You're completely protected. Your divorce is final. Your custody arrangement is legally solid, and you have no financial ties to him whatsoever. His legal problems are entirely his own. After David left, Celine and I sat on the patio watching James play with his blocks. The afternoon sun was warm on our faces, and the garden was in full bloom, a stark contrast to the darkness of our conversation. I should feel something, Selena said eventually. Satisfaction, vindication, even pity. But I just feel empty, like he's finally become completely irrelevant to our lives. That's healthy, I told her. It means you've truly moved on. Do you think he'll try to contact us from prison? Try to manipulate us one more time. I considered the question carefully. He might try, but it won't matter. You're not the same woman who married him, Celine. You found your strength. You know your worth. He can't hurt you anymore. That evening, after James was asleep and Celine was studying for her graduate courses, I sat in my bedroom looking through old photo albums. Pictures of Thomas and me in our early years, images of Celine as a child, memories of a life built on love and trust rather than manipulation and control. There was a knock on my door and Celine peered in. Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? She settled on the edge of my bed, looking suddenly vulnerable. I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I need to say something. I waited, giving her space to find the words. I'm sorry, she said finally. For all those years when I defended him, when I chose his version of events over your instincts, for letting him make you feel unwelcome in your own daughter's life, for not seeing what you saw from the beginning. I reached over and took her hand. You have nothing to apologize for. You loved him. And love makes us want to believe the best about people. That's not a flaw. It's one of your greatest strengths. But I hurt you. I pushed you away because he convinced me you were the problem. And then you found your way back, I said gently. That's what matters. Not the mistakes you made, but the courage you showed in correcting them. Celine was quiet for a moment, tears sliding down her cheeks. I used to think I needed someone to complete me, to make me whole. Quinn convinced me I was nothing without him, and now she wiped her eyes and smiled. Now I know I was always whole. I just needed to remember it. Later that night, after Celine had gone back to her studies, I stood in James's nursery watching him sleep. His tiny chest rose and fell peacefully, completely unaware of the storm that had surrounded his early months. This little boy would grow up knowing he was loved unconditionally. He would see his mother as a strong, independent woman who had overcome adversity. He would learn that families were built on respect and support, not control and manipulation. He would never know a world where his worth was conditional on someone else's approval. I thought about Quinn sitting in a jail cell, finally facing the consequences of a lifetime of selfish choices. Part of me felt pity for him, not for his circumstances, which were entirely self-inflicted, but for the opportunities he had wasted. He could have been a good husband, a loving father, a man his son could look up to. Instead, he had chosen immediate gratification over lasting happiness, control over love, cruelty over kindness. But his failures had inadvertently given us something precious. The chance to rebuild our family on a foundation of truth and genuine love. Celine was stronger now than she had ever been when married to him. James would grow up in a home filled with laughter instead of tension. And I had learned that sometimes protecting the people you love means being willing to fight battles they don't even know are being fought. As I turned off the nursery light and headed to bed, I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm was over. The threats were neutralized. My family was safe, whole, and free to build whatever future they chose. Quinn Richardson had tried to destroy us, but in the end, he had only succeeded in making us stronger. And sometimes that's the most beautiful revenge of all. Not just surviving, but thriving in ways your enemies never imagined possible. In the quiet of the night, with my daughter studying for her future and my grandson sleeping peacefully, I allowed myself a small smile. Justice, it turned out, didn't always come with dramatic confrontations or public vindication. Sometimes it came quietly in the form of a woman finding her strength, a child growing up surrounded by love, and a family finally free to be exactly who they were meant to be. That was enough. That was everything. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.